Ladies and gentlemen, Henry Confidential here, and this is the return of the Against the Grain podcast. And this is a show that when I incepted, I was like, this is going to be a great idea because this community, we have a lot of people that follow each other on Letterboxd, and we have differing opinions, and we're able to see the difference in opinions, but we never have a chance to truly like scope it out and flesh it out and like discuss them. So the base of this show is I was just actually telling Kirk about this behind the scenes is we're gonna talk about our differencing of opinions, but it's not meant to tear each other down. It's just meant to acknowledge the difference in opinions and show the subjectivity within film and how we can respectfully disagree. And as you see in the title, arguably in Kirk's opinion, maybe he might change his mind. We'll see. But as of right now, from what we know of Kirk, Point Break is trash. So we'll talk about that later. But that's kind of why we're gonna have some fun with this. And if you watch the Your List Sucks Top 100 where Kirk hosted and also revealed his list, you see generally how he feels about movies and his taste in film. And if you just follow him on Letterboxd, you know that as well. 2.5 stars is his favorite number, and we'll talk about that more in depth later. So, Kirk, what are your thoughts in general of the concept of the show, and what are your thoughts of when I brought you the movies we're talking about, just generally speaking?
Sure. First of all, my most popular rating is 3 stars. Thank you very much. 535 3-star ratings. That 2.5 star thing is a popular fallacy. But no, I like the format. Everybody likes. I'm on the debate shows. I'm on Your List Sucks. People always like to argue. But I do realize that I need to respect others' opinions and just get different different takes. So people watch movies for different reasons. I got to realize that, and this show's a good exercise for me. As far as the movies we picked, I think it's interesting. We both picked mostly crime movies, but very different crime movies. So it's just going to be interesting to see where we fall with all of them.
So initially, we actually started scheduling this about a month ago when you were at the highlight of the end run of the Top 100 as a host. So we decided that it wasn't the best time for you, and I had already started like planning it out. So I was like, I'll just wait out and be patient. So initially, I wanted to watch Frances Ha's my first time watch, but it got taken off Criteria, and then I ended up doing a first time watch of Down by Law, the Jim Jarmusch film, and then ironically, I don't know if Frances Ha was put back on Criterion or if I just missed it that day that I looked it up. So I happened to watch it as well. So that's why today we're going to talk about 5 films instead of the traditional 4 films, just because it was in the cards and it was taken out, and it's just a weird thing. So we're actually going to get right into it with our first time watches, and I'm going to start right off the bat with Frances Ha because I love that movie. I am genuinely surprised. I related to that movie so much. Like I am genuinely surprised, and not necessarily because I expected to dislike it by any means. I just didn't know what to expect, and people know me at this point that I don't love Lady Bird, so I'm not the biggest like Greta Gerwig fan, and Noah Baumbach. I'm hit or miss with this film, where he's fine, and this movie, when he's not. As a matter of fact, when Noah Baumbach's not talking about divorce, I actually relate to him. So I love the fact
Isn't that often?
Yeah, you ain't lying. So Frances Ha, she's a 27-year-old woman. Whatever, she's trying to become a dancer. She's an apprentice, and she's just not quite there yet. And as a 28-year-old man who's still figuring out his life, I'm like, wow, I relate to that so well. Now you on the the counter, and you're a little older than 27. Why do you like this movie?
I think it's still, and I'm in the opposite camp. I love Lady Bird. And the reason I love Lady Bird is I think it's so relatable, regardless of age, regardless of gender. I think it's somewhere we've all been at some point in our lives. And just that in that movie, it's that idea of wanting that freedom and wanting, wanting to be able to control your life, but not knowing what to do with it. I think that's such a super relatable thing. And I think a lot of the seeds of that movie are in Frances Ha, Greta having written both. And just it's such a relatable character in like no matter where you're at in life, you can either look back like you said you're kind of in that spot now, but if you're out of it, you've all been there, but you can relate to that idea of just kind of always feeling like an outsider, feeling like you're one step behind everybody else. And just like I said, I think there's just a real universality to it, and I think the way she plays this character is so easily to root for. She's so charming, she's so likable, and like I said, she's so relatable.
There's one scene when she's at a dinner, and every time she's starting to talk, you're just so nervous that she's going to just make a fool out of herself, say something
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous. And she tiptoes that line where she starts to, and just the people within the party are just so respectful and nice that they kind of just let it go and they just
Yeah.
allow it. But you can tell the awkwardness and the tension every time she starts to like take over a conversation or just veer it left, and you're like, oh, you're just so nervous. You're like, please don't, like, you're doing all right. And then there's the awkward thing where at the end of that party she's like, yeah, so I'm going to Paris. And then the guy's like, "Oh, do you want to use our apartment?" Okay, like she
Yeah.
just forced her way into that situation, and she just figures out a way to like do that and make bad decisions. It's like the not rom com, but the comedic coming of age as an adult version of Uncut Gems, where it's just nonstop. Why are you doing this? And you want to
Yeah.
root for them, and they're just giving you reasons not to. But there's just something about the characters that you're like, I want to, and it's so much fun. So,
Yeah.
when I told you that I wanted to talk about this movie, what were your thoughts going on, knowing my movie taste? Did you expect that I was gonna like it, love it, hate it, be on the fence, or were you genuinely just unsure?
I didn't think you would hate it. I thought you might, I didn't think it'd necessarily be one of your favorites. But I think this is just a hard movie to hate. I think because of that character, she's so easy to root for. It's so easy to like. It's hard. It's hard to come across somebody who's going to hate this movie. So I figured you'd be at least okay with it. I wasn't sure. I figured you'd be like somewhere like average to maybe slightly below, slightly above. But I thought you'd be at least okay with it.
Yeah. So, we as we're teasing and joking a little bit at the beginning, you're very harsh with your ratings. You have it at 4 stars, correct?
Yeah.
And is that considered a good movie or a great movie to you?
4 stars is the start of great. 3.5 is a good, really solid movie. 4 stars is where I really start to connect to movies. Like anything 4 star to have, like a lot of 3.5 star movies for me are movies that are good. There's absolutely nothing wrong with them. I just didn't like connect with them on a personal level. 4 star and up is where it's like the movie meant something to me. So that's where that's at, because first time I watched this, like I said, I just fell in love with the character. I fell in love with the story, and like I said, there's a connection there because it's such a universal idea and such a universal character.
So I think this is a movie that we can agree on that we both would recommend it. So if you have not seen Francis Ha, and if at any point in your life you've gone through a midlife crisis, quarter life crisis, kind of like The Graduate at the end of The Graduate, where he just doesn't know where he's going to be in life. He doesn't have any downfalls, and he doesn't really have a reason to have any doubts of his future, but for some reason he just does, and that's similar. That's kind of so essentially that's Benjamin Braddock. A couple years later, that's who Francis Ha ends up being,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. You know what I mean? So if you like The Graduate, and this is kind of the female perspective of what that would be. So I recommend it. Kirk recommends it. So Francis Ha, I'm
Definitely.
glad I checked it out, and that is definitely that is a benefit of having this show for the first time watch. And we will talk about our other first time watches next. So I'll give you a chance now to talk about your first time watch. Why did you pick this movie? What were your thoughts beforehand? Like your blank thoughts, and what are your thoughts now?
I was going through your letterbox. I was looking at your higher rated movies, and even though we have a lot of different opinions, like there are a lot of movies that you've seen that I haven't. Like like most of your watches are shaded on my. I would say most, but a lot of the movies you've seen are shaded on my list, and so I was going through and I saw Pain Gain, and that's something that I've always thought about watching. I'm not a big Michael Bay fan, but I'm like interested to see what he does, and I've heard things about this movie, very mixed reviews. But like the bad's really bad, and the good is like pretty good. Like they're talking about like what what Bay. It's kind of different than anything else he's done. So I was curious about it. I like crime films in general. So just the idea of it kind of appealed to me. So it was something I'd want to check out for a while. So I figured I'd take advantage of it here.
And now that you have seen the movie, uh, give a what would be your letterbox review, and then expand on it a little more now since you can talk about it.
Okay, I feel bad because you really liked my movie and said a lot of nice things about it. I did not like this movie. I found for two main reasons. First of all, I know in your review, the one review, you compared it to Wolf of Wall, or you said something about double featuring with Wolf of Wall Street, and I really just see this as Bay trying to do Scorsese and just throw it up all over himself. Like I think he tries and just really stumbles out of the gate. Um, and I'll expand on that more. But my other reason is the way the subject matter is handled. Just the fact that it's based on a true story, and it's some pretty awful things, and the way it's handled and the tone of the movie really turned me off. And I really, it was really hard for me. Not hard for me. I couldn't sympathize with the protagonist at all, and I was just kind of like just angry through the rest of the movie because of that.
So that's actually the common critique I see with this film is that it's wanting you to root for the characters, and that's why I compare it to Wolf of Wall Street, because it's the same thing. It wants you to root for Jordan Belfort in there, but he's stealing from people and he's a bad guy, and you're not necessarily rooting for him. You just happen to like him, but that's who he was in real life. People liked him, they followed him, just like, for example, Charles Manson. You don't like what he's doing, but people like his personality, and he's charismatic. So similar to this with Daniel Lugo, Mark Wahlberg's character, at no point in the movie does it ever actually make him think he's smart. He thinks he's smart, but there's multiple times where like Dwayne Johnson or Anthony Mackie's character is like, I think he knows what he's doing, so let's just follow him. And they're just kind of blindly leading. And there's multiple times in the movie where he's like, I watch a lot of movies, I know what I'm doing. So he knows essentially that he's winging it the entire time. So I think the movie doesn't shy away from the fact that it is dumb and they're bad people, but we're having fun while doing it because that's kind of why they were able to get away with it for as long as they did, and why they had people following them. So I don't necessarily think Michael Bay, other than like the aspects of Flash that Michael Bay does, I don't think at any point story-wise does he say, hey, this stuff is okay. And I'm not going to lie, I relate to this movie because as a person who loves fitness and bodybuilding as a whole, I just connect to that universe. And Monk is tied for my favorite show of all time. So anything to do with Tony Shalhoub and seeing him doing something very opposite of Adrian Monk in this movie as Victor Kershaw, that just it's just so much fun for me to watch. So I relate to it. So I've always admitted that I love this movie more than most, but I don't agree with the criticism of the fact that it glorifies the crimes. It showcases the crimes and it shows them off, but I don't ever think that the movie is saying these guys are smart or right. They're just saying these guys think they're smart and right, but yet they're pretty dumb, and here's just how it went down.
I don't necessarily think it glorifies the crime. To me, it's just the fact that so much of it, and I mean, there are some funny moments, like when they're trying, like their first attempts at kidnapping. I mean, I laughed at this movie, several times. Like it wasn't like I was sitting there stone faced. Early on, it's funny when they're trying the tried and failed kidnapping attempts. Those are amusing. But when it gets a little more serious, the movie doesn't get serious, but what they're doing gets more serious. And they, and they're doing these things, and it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of played for laughs. I realize it's a dark comedy, but still, like I said, the fact that it's based on a true story, makes it puts a little more weight on it. But like it's kind of tone deaf to me, and so I don't think it's glorifying, because I mean, like I compare it to Scorsese. It's like when the difference is, Scorsese makes you sympathize, and I compare it more to Goodfellas than I do to Wolf of Wall Street.
Okay.
Just because of I understand the Belfort, the Belfort connection makes sense, but just the fact of what they're doing, like Belfort didn't kill or torture anybody. But like you watch Goodfellas, and when Spider gets shot, that's a serious moment, and you have Ray Liotta, you have Henry Hill there, you see his shock when that happens, and he's kind of like the insert for the audience. He grounds that scene because, like, we're as shocked as he is that it happened. And that's, I think, what this movie is missing, is there's nothing for us to relate to, as far as like when they're doing these, like it's just them and they're doing it, and from their perspective everything's okay, and it's because they're getting what they want out of it, so it's fine. But I think that's what this movie is sorely missing, is something or anything to connect us to it and say, okay, somebody's like, somehow it's wrong. The movie knows it's wrong. It feels like the movie, maybe the movie knows it's wrong, but the characters are just so outlandish and so okay with what they're doing. They're obviously bad. That's just the difference for me.
Yeah, and I agree on that aspect, but I feel like it's subtle. But like I said, the fact that the movie at no point actually tries to make them seem smart. It's just like,
Hmm.
hey, that's why they think they're doing something right, because they think they're doing like Robin Hood esque activities. Like if we steal from the rich, no one's getting hurt. Well, that guy got hurt, but like no one else is getting hurt. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that's what they're trying to say. And there's a scene with or a bunch of scenes with the Rock's character and how he's trying to find Jesus and find religion
Yeah.
and get good, but then he like punches Tony Shalhoub in the face, or he's hurting people, and he's like, I don't want to do this. I want to, but at the end of the day, quote unquote, in their mindset, I have to do this. This is the
Yeah.
job. Whether it's because they're vulnerable or gullible and they're naive, or they're just desperate before what they're doing. So I feel like it toes the line, and I get that, especially on a first time watch, your instinct is just to see the bad stuff and to think that, like you said, maybe not glorifying, but not necessarily giving you a reason to sympathize for them. But I think on multiple watches, I've realized that there's subtle things throughout sprinkled that it's like it's not necessarily as evil as a lot of people think so that's why I'm trying to shed that light, where I'm like, I feel like
Sure.
it's a little bit smart. I'm not saying it's smart, but I think it's a little bit smarter than people give it credit for.
I definitely think out of the three protagonists, Rock is definitely the most relatable and the most sympathetic. But even his character kind of goes off the deep end a little bit. And I think you mentioned Tony Shalhoub. I think he's great in this. And I think that's another problem is they made. I guess he's not necessarily the villain, but their antagonist is the most they made him so sympathetic. Like I'm rooting for him the whole time. I'm rooting for him to take these guys down. And so, like when you see him cry and talk about his alcoholism and everything, like his worst sin is being what the protagonists are trying to be.
Yeah.
And that just, that doesn't jibe. Like, it's like, well, he's a bad guy because he's this, but this is what our good guys are attempting to be. So it just doesn't make sense.
And I'll just say one more comparison, just for the fact, because I feel like at the end of the day, we both have our we're set in stone our ways. But I think of it like the Joker, like seeing a movie from the villain's perspective. And I think this is a movie from the villain's perspective, but because they're naive and they are funny and likable, whether you want to like them or not, they just have enough charisma to kind of blindly like at least a little bit of them. That when you're watching it through their perspective, it just gives you like in example, Goodfellas. Other than the fact when they're actually doing the killing, you like most of the stuff that they're doing, and even if you feel guilty at some point deep down, you're like, I'm rooting for them. So in this movie, you're not necessarily rooting for them to do it, like you said, you're rooting for Tony Shalhoub to take them over, and I feel like it's some weird reverse psychology. It's putting you in a weird mindset of watching the film, and that's why I said, like, as on rewatches, I feel like it's just a little bit smarter than people give it credit for, because when a lot of people, when they watch it once, they're like, oh, I got enough out of it, and they don't rewatch it. So it's one of those things that I personally recommend, if you've only seen it the once and you're siding with Kirk on this one, I feel like give it another rewatch from the lens that I'm kind of pitching and see if it changes. And if it doesn't, hey, that maybe I'm just sympathetic for bodybuilders and Tony Shalhoub and Mark Wahlberg and Dwayne the Rock Johnson. You know what I mean? Maybe that is just me. But
Yeah.
I feel like
And I take your point. Like you're a lot more in that world, like not the criminal world, but like the world they're in at the beginning. And like to me, like honestly, like that their whole like attitude, that like get rich quick, like motivational speaker kind of stuff, like that whole thing just personally for me turned me off. So like I didn't have that connection to the characters as a foundation when they started doing all the craziest.
Well, it's just because you brought it up, the Johnny Woo scene with oh my God, Ken Jeong, when he's doing the speaking, you look in the crowd and you have to realize for a second that it's Mark Wahlberg, so he's playing a real character. So forget it's Mark Wahlberg for a second and just look at everyone else in the crowd at that seminar, and they're goofy, nerdy looking guys who are in that mindset of get rich quick. So take that and just take Mark Wahlberg out of that, and you're like, he's one of them. So even if he's a bodybuilder and he's a swole buff guy, other than that, he still has that mentality. So it's like that's just who they are as people. And just like Dwayne the Rock Johnson, he's vulnerable, he's got a drug problem. Anthony Mackie, he's like he says it all the time. He's like, once these roids kick in, I'm going to be a different man. He's also trying to get the easy route, and that's just who they are as people. And I feel like it never shies away from that. So give it a shot, watch it, and let's see what you think. Kirk, so what is the rating? Reveal your rating. And did it get 2.5? Because I feel like if it got at least 2.5, I'll be happy, but maybe not. We'll see.
It's not going to get to 2.5. I haven't written my review yet, but it's probably going to be a 1 or a 1.5. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go half star on this because, like I said, there were some entertainment moments at the beginning, but at the end, like honestly, I don't want to spoil it, but their ultimate fate at the end, I was so happy. I'm like, yes, and I shouldn't feel that way about the protagonists in a movie, even though if they were doing bad, I should be on their side a little bit, and that's where the movie really failed me. So it's going to get a low rating, not my lowest, but it's going to be pretty low.
Damn. Well,
sorry.
All right. Well, that's fair. I'm a little bummed out from that. But we're gonna go on to my first time watch. So when I looked at your movies and I looked at movies that I'm like, all right, what do you rate highly? Because it's not much. And similar to what you said earlier, a lot of movies that you've seen and rate high, I've seen and rated high,
yeah.
and I respect. Or even though I haven't seen it yet, like for example, Ran or Yojimbo, I know that at the bare minimum, I'm more likely gonna like it, so I don't consider it the criteria for the structure. Yeah. So I went with Down by Law from Jim Jarmusch because I've only seen two of his movies. I've seen Dead Man and I've seen The Dead Don't Die, which, I don't think anyone's going to argue the fact that The Dead Don't Die is terrible, and Dead Man was fine. There was inoffensible. It was Johnny Depp was good. It was slowly paced, but I know that that's just his vibe. I haven't seen Patterson yet, but I've heard that's pretty much what the gist is. Day in the life, fly on the wall, whatever. So I wanted to check this one out because most people have it rated high, and it's boring. Like, it's not similar to. Okay, so here's where I'll give a little difference, but also compare it to Dead Man. Just like Dead Man, where it's inoffensible, this one's inoffensive. It doesn't do anything wrong. It just doesn't have many highlight moments, except for the ice cream scene. The ice cream scene in the prison is a lot of fun because it just, it goes on a little too long, which maybe that was the point. I don't know, but that scene was fun. But in the end, I don't really get the points of like the end goal, you know what I mean? Like, I definitely don't want to spoil this because I'm sure, especially within this community, most people haven't seen it, so I at least want them to have their own, experience. But I just, like how you said at the end of Pain and Gain, you're rooting for how it went down. Like, you were happy whether you were supposed to or not, whatever. But you at least had an emotion. I had nothing at the end. I'm like, really? You know what I mean? And maybe that was the point, and I didn't get it. But I mean, it's one of those movies that if you don't get it, you're not gonna enjoy it. And that was definitely the case. Like, I didn't really like any of the characters. You know what I mean? Like at the beginning when oh my goodness, what's his name? He won the Oscar for Life is Beautiful. I'm forgetting his name.
Roberto Benigni.
Roberto Benigni. When he first came in there, I didn't recognize him because I haven't seen him that young, and I've only seen him in a few things. That I was like, is he doing a fake Italian accent or is he doing a real? Like, it took me a minute to like. I thought maybe when he got into the prison, he was like, oh, this is just me doing an accent. I'm Mario, and then it's like, oh no, I'm not. I'm just playing a character, guys. Come on, let's break out of jail or so, like there was some scheme, and then it was just that was his accent as his character. I'm like, oof, I don't know. I'm not really feeling this, So I don't know if that's his real accent or not. I don't know as a person, but I don't know. I just didn't connect to it. So I don't, like I said, it's inoffensible and it's not bad on that regard. It's just I didn't care and I didn't have fun, and I definitely have no reason to rewatch it. Why do you rate this movie high, and what is the opposite opinion from you?
Exact opposite. Because I mean, and I think what comes down to is whether or not you connect to the characters, because it's very character driven, obviously. And I did right away. I loved the characters. I love Tom Waits in this. I think he does. He acts almost exclusively for Jim Jarmusch. He's not in a whole lot of other things, at least that I've seen. But on all his Jarmusch work, this is my absolute favorite character he creates. I love Roberto Benigni in this. The third actor, whose name I'm blanking on, he's not as well known as the two of them. He's in some other Jarmusch stuff, but again, this is the best one he's in. The three of them, I just love the three different characters. I love how they all just have very different motivations and just very, very different personalities. I love the time in the prison. I said this in my Letterboxd review. I love how long they just hold in that cell and just do basically the jump cuts. Through the progression of time. You think you go in and they're in the cell and you think, okay, this is going to resolve itself quickly one way or the other, and it doesn't. And I can see how some people might think that's boring, but I loved it. Like I mean, it feels like they're in there like 15 minutes, like just in that cell. The two of them at first, then Benigni comes in, and I love every second of it. And then again, I won't spoil it much for you, but just I love the relationships they build. Especially between the two main characters. So yeah, that was my connection to it. Yeah, and I understand if you don't connect the characters, the movie's going to completely fall flat for you. So
I think another thing is like the relationship of the two main characters before Benini comes in. Their stories have a connection that I thought it was going to ultimately play a part more. You know what I mean? I thought they were going to connect deeper on a deeper level, and it really didn't. It was just a tying them together to put them in a scenario, and I felt like that was just missing. You know what I mean? Because it's one of those things. Like it's like the old argument. It's like a Star Wars movie. Not everything has to be related to the Skywalkers. You can have your own thing, but still, if you're going to be in that story, you're going to set it up that way. You might as well have it pay off. And I feel like that it just I don't know. It was just, and also the setups, like once again, we don't want to get spoiled just because it's a lesser known movie, so it's kind of it's sad that we don't really get to because it defeats the purpose. But the fact that there's setups in this movie and there's not really there's no reason, you know what I mean? So if you're gonna set someone up, at least have a reason. And I don't know, like I said, just missing something. It didn't do anything inoffensible. It's just missing something.
I mean, like you touched on that before. I mean, this is Jarmusch's kind of style, where he's not too concerned about I don't want to say, I mean, I think he has solid narrative, but I don't think he's worried about like telling a traditional movie story. So it does kind of like, and I hate to use this term, but it kind of does kind of subvert your expectations, because like they end up just being three guys that are there, and and again, it's all about their relationships and all about their friendship. And I love the ending. I think the ending's beautiful, and yeah, but I mean that's where it is. Like I'm not like mad at you for not liking it, because if it's all about those characters. So if that's not there for you, then there's going to be nothing there for you to have.
So like how I readjusted my letterbox is I went 5 stars is a personal favorite. Regardless, at this point, you take subjectivity out or objectivity. It's just subjective at this point. If it's a 5-star movie, it's in my tops, whatever. Whatever list I'm doing, it's at the top. Just like Pain and Gain, it's a 5-star movie. Is it objectively a 5-star movie? Probably not, but it's because it's a favorite. It's a 5-star movie. Anyway, 4 stars. I took the halves out of it because I wanted to separate the 5 stars, which is a favorite, to just a good movie. So I took the half stars out, and 4 stars are good movies where, like, objectively speaking, I don't have any issues with. It's a good movie. It did what it was going for, X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. The 3 stars is a serviceable experience where I'm like, I either enjoyed it for how bad it was, but I had enough enjoyment into it that where it, maybe I could rewatch it, or I didn't maybe enjoy as much, but I can respect it on a technical level or whatever. This movie falls in the 2-star, where generally it was just a waste of time because it was just missing something. I went through an hour and a half, 2-hour film, and I didn't really get the point. I don't have a reason to want to go back. I didn't connect, you know what I mean, like we just talked about. So that's why I feel like it's that it falls into that. And this was, for example, why I gave it that criteria of the quote unquote waste of time. That's why movies like this is what it does. So maybe it hits on a different level like it did for you, but that's where it's missing for me. So unfortunately, I'm giving it a 2-star, and I'll essentially summarize what I talked about here when I actually write the review. It's a 4-star for you, or is it a 4.5?
It's 4. This is also 4.
All right, so
yeah, it's funny because Francis Ha and Jarmusch, I both I was 2 different trivia matches. I had to run through Jarmusch and I had to run through Bombeck, and it was nice because I found one really good movie to connect with in both those experiences. So that's always worth it.
Yeah, that definitely. Whenever you have to study for trivia and it becomes a chore, at least you have something that comes out of it. So yeah, that is nice. I have plenty of experience of that. So now we are going to get into the meat and potatoes of the show. The true definition of Against the Grain. We know that we disagree with both of these movies, and now we can talk about it. I'm going to talk about my movie first, my rating that you disagree with first, just because I feel like the internet would, like, this is one of the few, like, I put it on the title for a reason. Like, this is the most clickbait worthy. Your take is hot garbage, but we'll talk about that later. But so I'm pretty sure it was on the top 100 or it was on Logged It, where you brought up the killing of a Chinese bookie.
Yes.
And I was like, I generally respect your opinions, and I don't think we have 100% crossover with our taste, but I feel like at the end of the day, if you recommend something that I've never heard of, I want to give it a chance. I saw it on HBO Max, or not, on Criterion, one of the two, and I jumped on it
Yes,
right
both.
away. I watched it, you know what I mean? And this missed the mark for me. This movie is uncut gems with all the fun taken out of it. It's the same it's the same vibe of what you're going for, of the you're on the edge of your seat, but like not in a good way. You're on the edge of your seat because you're trying to leave the room because you're just so bored. And I think when you talked about this movie, you said like this is the best Ben Gazzara has ever been, and I just didn't see it. Like, I mean, I don't, obviously Big Lebowski is my favorite movie of all time, so I mean I know him from that movie, but like other than that, I don't know. Maybe I've seen him here and there, but nothing that stands out. So I didn't have nothing to compare it to. But
Roadhouse.
this was. Yeah, I haven't seen the Roadhouse, so I guess I can't compare it to that. So, but this doesn't make me want to like start looking at his filmography. You know what I mean? So I was just, I don't know. Like I said, this is just not fun, and like even his club, like there's nothing about it that What I did learn is, I don't want to talk about another movie too much, but I watched oh my god, what was it called? I watched another movie with a similar filmmaking and Night Moves with Gene Hackman, and it's a similar 70s filmmaking where it just, and I wrote this in my Night Moves review about comparing it to this, where if you see a movie like Chinatown and how it like has a similar vibe, but because it's set in a prior time, it has a timeless feeling, whereas this one, it feels dated with its filmmaking, and it's just, I don't know, it's just missing the mark. And I just did not enjoy this movie. So when you I wouldn't say you hyped it up, you just gave your opinion, but what am I missing with this film? Why do you consider this a great film?
I mean, I think this goes back to what we talked about Down by Law. Like, I mean, I think the difference it seems between you and me is like I like those slower burn movies, where it just takes its time, and it's not like a high concept. It's not there's no real I don't know how exactly how to phrase it, but it just kind of it takes its time. I knew based on your opinion of Killing of a Chinese Bookie that you work on like Down by Law, because they both have that same kind of feel to it. Very character driven, very slow, very dry. But yeah, I think like you said, like there's not a lot of fun going on. Like his club's not fun. I think that's the point of the movie. Like I think it's so personal to him. Like I said this when I talked about it on both on my top 100 and on Logged It. Like the thing I love about this movie is most movies, whatever the main character wants, no matter how kind of in the grand scheme of things meaningless is, it's like getting the girl or winning the big game, whatever. Because you're watching the movie through that character's eyes, in the universe of that movie, there's nothing more important than them achieving their goal and getting what they want. This movie completely takes those blinders off and shows you, he's so passionate about this club, but it shows you exactly how small time he is and how, sleazy and kind of just like gross and like not important the club is. But, I guess obviously you didn't connect it. For me, because of his passion for it, that connected me, and that's what made me care. I didn't care because, oh yeah, the movie's making me think that this club is so important, it's such a big deal. It's not at all. It's the exact opposite. But you see his passion for it and how much it means to him, and that's that's if you read in the movie a little bit more, he's actually he's a stand-in for John Cassavetes. This is John Cassavetes' story about his filmmaking and about him doing personal things that he wants to do and people trying to prevent him from doing that stuff, the system, whatever. And, when you look at it at that level, it adds a whole other thing to it. But yeah, I just think it's, about him. It is slow. And like I said, it shows you just kind of how like, I don't want to say stupid, but kind of like how just small time and low key his life is. And he thinks it's so much more, but you can see it's not. That's what I love about it. And I love Ben Gazzara's person. I just love him as an actor. I love his personality. I love those moments where it's just kind of him riffing. So yeah, that's what I love about it.
So if I did have half stars, there's two scenes in this movie that would make me want to do a 2.5 stars, because I definitely can't give it the 3 stars regardless, because of the surfable experience. It just still wasn't a surfable experience. But these two scenes would bump it up to 2.5 if I did 2.5. The actual title, Killing of a Chinese Bookie, that scene is fantastic. But spoiler alert, it's only about 5 minutes worth of the actual movie. Like, it's a 2 hour 15 movie for the director's cut. You know what I mean? It's a 2 hour 15 movie, and the real the title of the movie is only about 5-10 minutes, depending on whatever. So, but that was fantastic. Like, if there was more of that stuff going on, we might have be onto something. And then the second scene is when he's doing this audition for a dancer, and his I don't remember if she was his lady friend or just his number one girl or whatever, however you'd classify it. But when she comes in and she throws a fit, and it's just you felt that emotion. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to compare too much to Uncut Gems, but in the scenes when Uncut Gems where Adam Sandler and Julia Fox are like fighting, and you're like, I don't really know what they're fighting about. It's so stupid, but you feel that it's real. That scene really had that. You know what I mean? You don't really know why she's so mad and jealous, but you just feel it. You're like, I can relate to that. So those two scenes alone would have bumped it up to a 2.5 for me if I had a 2.5 rating. So I do give it credit for those two.
And that scene just such a great looking scene. The way that's lit when he's going through and he's kind of like she's up there and he's like bringing the chairs down. That light's coming through the door. Such a great looking scene. My favorite scene in the movie is when he's on his way to do the titular action.
Yeah.
And he gets the flat and he stops and he calls the guy. He's like, "Is he singing the song?"
Yeah.
"What song? What do you mean you did?" "I can't give you anything." And to me that just shows like he's going to kill. He has to kill this guy or be killed himself. And he's still so obsessed with the club that he takes time to stop, call him up, make sure the show's running great. And that's the moment in that movie where I really fell in love with that character.
And yeah, so if you never mentioned that on, I think it was on Logged In Specific, or like you said, both of them. But if you didn't actually mention that, I wouldn't have noticed it. But since you had mentioned it, when that scene happened, I'm like, that's exactly what Kirk was talking about. So I do give him credit for that. So that's definitely a good thing for you, where you put that in my mindset, so you made me have that perspective when I was watching it. So I do appreciate that. So maybe 2.5 scenes. I do like that scene as well. So it's tough. Like, I do genuinely, like, in my review I literally wrote, "Sorry Kirk, I didn't like this one bit."
Yeah.
I guess that's a little exaggeration. I guess I kind of wanted to make you notice it, but
no, I got it.
But it was one of those where I don't know, it's like I remember when you were talking about it. I don't remember if you said Cody should watch this because he would love it, but I personally don't think he would like this. So I'm definitely curious to see if you guys have ever talked about it, because I feel like he would be mad at you as well and be like, "No, what taste do you think I have? I don't like this at all." And I would love to see that conversation. So if you guys have seen The Killing of a Chinese Bookie, because I know not many people really have seen it, heard of it, or whatever, so I'm definitely curious if you guys have seen it. Comment below your thoughts on the film, or after our discussion back and forth if you want to see it, and who you side on his opinion. So it's going to be interesting. All right, let's get into it. I know you've talked about this movie a bunch on the Top 100, but I just don't get it at all. Point Break. Why? I need you to essentially defend yourself. Why do you consider this movie an abomination? Like, if you just didn't like it because it's cheesy or goofy or silly or dumb action, whatever, that's fine. But like, I feel like you have a personal hatred for this movie. Like, this and The Breakfast Club are two movies where you're like, yeah. So like, what is it about this movie that truly gets you?
I just have a personal hatred for this kind of movie. And this is kind of like a culmination of a lot of bad things about movies. And I mean, I know a lot of people love like cheesy stuff, or they like the silly whatever, and that's fine, whatever. But I just hate, like, there's so many bad cop movie tropes in this. Like, everybody's yelling at everybody for no reason. Like, everybody's just angry. Like, the scene where those two cops, like that other like pair of partners, like, the only reason they exist in this movie is to like yell and fight with the other two. And they come up and they're getting on Gary's views. He's like, "Oh yeah, he thinks these criminals are surfers. How stupid is he?" And I'm like, well, you don't have any leads, and he has really solid evidence as to why they would be surfers. There's no reason for you to be making fun out of him for that. Like, it's a really good theory. It's a very solid theory. So just like that, and I mean, to me, it's like the reason why everybody's screaming is like, that's like, movies like this use that for a replacement for like real drama and character interaction. Like, everybody's just pissed off and angry for no reason. Like John C. McGinty has no reason to act the way he does towards Keanu Reeves. Like, Keanu Reeves walks in and he's immediately at an 11. and just firing off at him for no reason. And that's the whole movie. So I hate all those like cop movie tropes. I hate the way, like, I hate the action scenes, like that chase scene. I know people talk about like it's good. That chase scene is terrible. The way it's edited, you have no sense of time or place. It's just so choppy. And the one thing I would say, the one positive I say is like a lot of the surfing looks good. That's the one thing I like about it. The rest of it. The movie looks like crap. Like it's really shot bad. It's edited bad, and I just like I hate. I mean, I think this is just where you and I completely differ in movie taste. Is like I need a movie where like I feel like I'm watching real people. Like if I feel like I'm watching movie characters, I'm instantly sucked out. And every character in this movie is like a paint by numbers cop movie character.
So I think I'll start with that. You relate to Keanu Reeves, Johnny Utah, a lot in this film. He starts off as the rookie, which sure that's a trope, but like you got to have a plot somewhere, so that is what it is. So he starts off there, but he started off as a star football player, as a quarterback, and then he got injured, so he had to like pretty much shift his life, and he had to start something new. But in his mind, he has that competitive nature. So the scene with John C. McGinty, where he's like, he's saying all these crazy things, most of it we can't repeat, but he's saying all these wild things, and it's more of along the lines of like, hey, we're in the FBI, we're at the top of the top, you know what I mean? You need to be tough as nails. If you can't handle, it's so one of my favorite lines in Glengarry Glen Ross, one of my favorite movies, like if you can't take this here, how are you going to take it out on a sit? You know what I mean? I'm pretty much setting you up for the type of abuse that you're going to get out there. So, you know what I mean? So it's one of those things where you can call it a trope if you want, but people that's the approach that, some companies and businesses and other stuff take, and I feel like that's what they went with it. And it's once again, sure, you want to call it a trope, but for the early 90s with Gary Busey's character, where he's like, I don't want this rookie and blah blah blah, he barely doesn't have hair on his chin, or all that stuff, and then he turns around, he sees him, he's like, oh, and it just shows that he's just talking shit. You know what I mean? That's just his point. It's just a front, and that's just the, like you said, it may be a trope, sure, nowadays, but then it builds the character, and that's where they're able to grow, because even towards the end, we're getting to spoilers on this one because it's more of a popular movie, when technically he gets in trouble and then Gary Busey lets him go to actually do what he needs to do. That's because of all the rapport and the the friendship that they've genuinely built up throughout this movie. And you said, once again, you say there's no characters, but like Johnny Utah, when he's infiltrating and he's going undercover to get for Patrick Swayze's crew and the actual surfers, at first he's a good cop, and he's trying to do his thing, but then he starts to relate to him, and he's like, similar to with the Pain and Gain vibes, where it's like you shouldn't be relating to these guys because they're doing bad stuff, they're robbing banks, but they're so charismatic, and you're like, wow, if I am actually see it from their perspective, and I'm really starting to like listen to what he's saying and not just assuming he's such a bad guy, then it's like it's not so bad. So he really starts to shift, and it's not because he's not completely naive, and they set him up to where he's a good cop and all that stuff. But sometimes if you see the other side, it can really get to you. So I feel like it has a lot of character moments in the movie, and the action is fun. The actual bank robbing scenes are fun. The dead presidents, like the fact they have so much character and they're fun. The banter back and forth. The fact that they have beach parties and they're just regular guys and they only do this on the summer season so they can surf, and they're not criminals year round. That's just not who they are. They're just doing it to get by. That's a lifestyle that they choose. I feel like people, whether you relate to it specifically because you want to do it, I feel like you can understand people's thought process with that. So they're not just mindless, criminals. They got some stuff to relate to. So I definitely disagree on that end.
Going back to the what you were saying about Keanu's character, I think the problem why I have trouble connecting to that, and this is another big problem for the movie, is Keanu is awful in this. Like I think everybody is awful in this, but Keanu is at a whole other level of terribleness. I think this is up there with
Don't say it.
Bram Stoker's Dracula as his worst performance. But the thing is, he's only in Bram Stoker's Dracula for like 15 minutes. He's in this. I have to watch him act in this entire movie. Like he is, he's like just totally in his whoa phase. Like that's there. There's no range here. Like I'm not feeling his whatever emotion he's feeling about the when I understand the character on paper goes from right, here, with being a cop and everything, to relating to the criminals, but I don't feel that in the performance at all. He is just right here the entire time. And so, I mean, maybe if you put a stronger actor in there, I'd get some of that, but Keanu is so flat and so bad in this that I just can't connect to it at all.
Oh my god! So I feel like what they're doing with this movie is it's okay. So here's a good example. Like when you watch Jason Statham movies, is Jason Statham the best actor? No, but when the character is a Jason Statham worthy role, you don't need range from him. And I feel like that's what this is. He's a guy where he's set in his ways. He's who he is as a character. You know what I mean? He's the football player. He's got his mind on football. Oh no, I got hurt. Now I'm gonna be a cop. All right, I'm gonna infiltrate these guys. I'm gonna take these guys down. Oh no, I'm really starting to see a side. Okay, I'm really starting to get on there, and I really feel like it just does a nice parallel shift each time, and it doesn't take away from the story because you really start to you believe the friendship. You know what I mean? Like the scenes when he has with Tyler, everything that they're doing together and those emotions, it like he starts to fall in love with the girl who's connected to the crew. So that could also be a thing that really just got him deep at his core and why he's starting to get suckered into this group, and just the fact that Patrick Swayze, he's so charming, and what he's saying is might not be so bad, but at the end of the movie he's like, oh no, this really is so bad, what you're doing is over the top, because he's actually starting to teach. He used Tyler as a defense mechanism to get away with it, you know what I mean? So at that point, that's the breaking point. So there's a lot of things that you could connect with this, with the relationship with Busey, the start off the friendship with Patrick Swayze, and then Patrick Swayze is like legit like heartbroken when he finds out that he's a cop, because he's like, dude, I trust you. Like, I put you in. Like, you were my guy, and you just really see that, like, in his performance. So I don't like when you're saying like all of them's bad. That definitely hurts, because that just seeing that turn, that I thought that was great.
I mean, Swayze might be the best in this, but still, and again, another big pet peeve in movies for me is just when people are based on like a stereotype or a personality type, and like they're like the surfer dudes, and like his whole like, what do they call him? What's his nickname in this? I forget what it is, like that nickname is.
Bonavito, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But like that whole super dude persona, like that whole like guru thing, like just got old for me quick. And like, but you're saying like Jason Statham, like for Jason Statham action movie, he doesn't have to like have a lot of range, and that's fine. Even like in a Matrix, like that character doesn't have to have a lot of range. But like you're saying here, like he does the character is theoretically changing. He's evolving. He's developing. But the performance that I think to do that requires range just isn't there.
So I don't know. I've always connected to it, and it's one of those where on paper I'd always heard that it was cheesy. I really don't think it's cheesy. You know what I mean? Like that's where I disagree.
That's a stretch.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think everything they're doing is earned with its emotion and the action. You know what I mean? Does it have a couple slow motion scenes and all that stuff? But I don't think that's cheesy. You know what I mean? And like, does it use the lens flares and the camera to like really like put you in a direction of a mind? I don't know. If you don't like Keanu Reeves' performance, then yeah, that's fine. You could say it's bad acting technically, but I don't really think there's anything cheesy. Do you have one moment where you're like, that's like cheese? Because I still feel like I just don't understand what cheese is at this point. Because a lot of people just say that, and I most times I don't agree.
I'm an FBI agent. All like the surfer dude stuff is so cheesy. Like they're just leading into that so far. Like all the cop tropes, all like that part where like you said, Gary Busey's like he's talking trash on him for no reason other than it's a cop movie and that's what he's supposed to do. Like that kind of stuff. Like all that dialogue, so much of that like cop dialogue. Those two the two other cops are like just complete cheese characters, and like all their dialogue is so bad and all their insults and everything. I mean, like, again, this is just highlighting you and I, the difference we have in movies. Like, I'm very plot driven, I'm very character driven, not plot driven necessarily, but character driven and very dialogue driven. Like, I need to feel grounded in reality, and I just don't feel that in this movie.
And so that's what I was hinting at a second ago. Where when I first watched this movie, I was genuinely surprised of how I was able to connect to it and how much fun I did have with this. Because I am actually the same way. But where this differs with Chinese Bookie and essentially Down by Law 2, whereas I still want fun moments, you know what I mean? I still want something, whereas like we're talking about, even like with The Godfather, when you could talk about how it's boring and it's long, like those are people's gripes, whether they're right or wrong. That's gripes you can hear from, uneducated people. But there's highlights of that movie where like, no, there's this scene, this scene, this scene, this scene, this scene, this scene, where I couldn't really point out, I could point out the two, like I said, from Chinese Bookie, but in a 2-hour movie, just two scenes, it's not enough. Down by Law, I had the one scene with the ice cream. With this one, there's so many scenes that I can point out where it's just so much fun, you know what I mean? So it's fun and there's, connection. I do see the heart. So I disagree with the heart and acting. That's always going to be subjective when you think of someone's performance, if that's good or not. But I think it's pretty well acted. So people, if you made it this far, the main question is, if you clicked on the title, more than likely it's because you're a Point Break fan and Kirk's wrong. Kirk has it as a half-star movie. Like that, I honestly think, even after talking about it, I think at this point you're just doing it for the memes, and you genuinely don't think that, and you just want the clicks. You just want the clickbaits, and I can respect it as someone who's trying to get as many clicks as possible. Do what you got to do to get your attention. But I don't see this as a half-star movie, even from you. So I don't know.
Half star is a visceral reaction for me. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's visceral. And there is just something about a movie that makes me feel that's like I'm mad, like just mad when I'm done watching. There's nothing I enjoyed. And another movie I watched for Top 100 was Moulin Rouge. That's another movie is half star for me. Totally different movie, but just that same thing. Like just so many things I saw wrong with it and never had any fun with it. So that's why that half star is honestly my opinion on this movie. I don't like that 80s 90s buddy cop action genre at all. That's just not my scene, and this is to me one of the worst examples of it.
Well, I mean, if like we were talking about with your movies, if the slow and it doesn't fit, I guess. But even half star, I feel like that's just offensive. So I mean, it's fun that you brought up the Moulin Rouge, because when I did episode 1 with Brian Michaels, Moulin Rouge was the first time watch, and I actually enjoyed that movie. I was surprised because on paper I wasn't. I thought it was good.
So
I had fun with it. But that's neither here nor there. If you want to hear me talk about Moulin Rouge, you go ahead and check out episode 1 of the Against the Grain podcast. And if you want to hear Kirk talk about Moulin Rouge, go ahead and watch that episode of the Top 100 where him and Brian talked about that. So if you made it this far in the video, this is the return of the Against the Grain podcast. This is the general gist of it. Is I'm going to have a guest. I'm going to look at their letterbox. I'm going to pick one movie that they have 2 stars or lower rated, and I'm going to disagree with it, or a movie that is 2 stars or lower that I disagree with. I'm going to bring that to the table. They're going to do the same with me. And then we're also on the flip side going to look at each other's letterboxes, and we're going to look at the 4 stars or higher on paper, a movie that we don't expect to like, whether it's not our vibe, not our jam, whether we've heard bad things about it, like Kirk said about The Pain and Gain. He's heard bad things about it. Me, with my negative experience with Jim Jarmusch, that's why I chose that movie. So that's how it went. And unfortunately, in this episode, both first time watches were negative reactions. So that is a shame, because it definitely did not go against the grain there, because it is exactly what we expected, and that is a shame. And if you see right here, this is my letterbox. If you see right there, that is Kirk's letterbox. So if for some reason you are watching this and you are not following Kirk or myself, then go ahead and check us out on Letterboxd, and comment below your favorites of these 5 movies. Obviously mine's Point Break. Which one out of these 5 is your favorite, Kirk?
Chinese Bookie.
Ooh, okay. So Chinese Bookie versus Point Break. Comment below if you had to pick. If you had to pick one and the other's got to go forever, which one of those are you picking? But also, which one is your favorite overall of that? So this is the Against the Grain podcast, Henry Confidential, here on There Will Be Movies. I'm so happy to have this show back, and I can't wait, whether it's next week or in 2 weeks, depending on the scheduling of what we're gonna do. But I love this series. We got this on an hour, and we talked about 5 movies. I feel like we went some pretty good depth. So Henry Confidential, Kirk Kowalkowski. Thank God his internet stuck around. We delayed for this for a long time. Not even just for scheduling, but also today with his internet. So thank God it was meant to be that we talked about this. So drop a like, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff, and we will see you on the next one. Later.
Bye, everybody.